What is up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Lovely Loners. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at this Gavko and Forged Knifeworks collaboration, Mako. The first thing that I want to show you guys real quick is the presentation side of this knife before I get my fingerprints all over it. I just want you to see this awesome near mirror satin polish finish. And you can see it's broken apart by these little valleys here that are anodized this awesome blue. And I just think that's really neat. I wanted to show that off to you guys before I go doing this to it and getting stuff all over it. This knife comes to us from my buddy Francisco. He has sent some other knives as well. Super appreciative of that. Let's go ahead and line this thing up next to a PM2 to give you guys a little bit of a perspective on the size. I love this knife's mirror polish edge as well. It's very reminiscent of the PM2, my PM2 anyway. And so you can see they're pretty much the same size. The Gavko collab is a little bit thicker in quite a few dimensions, but that's pretty much it. So the PM2 is going to be thinner in terms of blade stock, thinner in terms of handles, and a little bit thinner in this direction as well. But ultimately, they are pretty much exactly the same length. The PM2 might even have a 1/16 of an inch on the Gavko there. And yeah, so that's going to do it for the size comparison. And let's go ahead and jump into the features and flaws on this one. So the first thing that I want to talk about on this knife are the ergonomics. And this knife has the ergonomics of a banana. And I have a banana to prove it. You can see here the shape lines up fairly well. And yes, in some respects I am being a bit humorous here, but when you hold the knife choked up on the finger choil, the knife has the ergonomics of a banana. It just is what it is. It feels like a banana, especially when you're holding it down like this. So yeah, it has the ergos of a banana. This is what it feels like to hold. So if you want to know what it's like to hold this knife, get a banana. But all jokes aside, this does have a fairly curved feel to it. And so if you are kind of down here on the knife, there's a nice little area for your thumb to hang out. Your index finger fits nicely into this little cutout here. This area has enough curve that you fit pretty well. My pinky does kind of come off this edge a little bit. I may have appreciated a little bit more surface area down on this end so that I could be hanging on to something. But the knife does kind of curl away into the hand, and then because you're holding it at this angle and the blade comes around like this, you actually end up getting, it's kind of an awkward feel, but it's a useful grip. So even though it kind of feels a little bit weird to something with a straighter handle like the 604, you know, this feels very like knife-like, you know, like in the same way that like a kitchen knife is straight. You know, this kind of gives you that vibe, whereas this doesn't. But it is useful because it's going to let you get a little bit more use out of this piercing point, because it's easier to push into something like this because the knife is curved that way a little bit, so you're not like completely crooked like this if you were trying to get somewhere. And it's just an interesting shape overall that I think definitely gives the knife character and makes it a little bit more unusual to wield. And then, of course, you can choke up into this larger finger choil and get a pretty strong, sturdy grip on this for any cutting task. It has a great belly on the blade for slicing. Again, it does have a good pinch grip as well. Your middle finger gets up in here, and then you can place your thumb, giving you place your thumb right on the presentation side, and that gives you a nice sturdy amount of control because your middle finger does a good job of applying pressure to the backside here, and so you end up pinching the knife kind of between the middle of your middle finger and the tip of your thumb, and then you also get this added grip to help keep you from sliding around here. And then of course your index finger is going to go right into that little harpoon there, and that makes it really great for slicing. and any task like that. So it's actually a remarkably efficient and useful knife, and this medium to heavy stonewash finish on the blade here is going to do a lot to help protect you from any obvious and early signs of wear. So this knife is definitely meant to be used, as I feel are many of the Ferrum Forge knives. At this point, I've gotten to try out the Ferrum Forge Scepter as well as the Ferrum Forge Mordax. And as you guys are familiar, I have the Gavko full custom small Mako, and then I also have a Gavko hybrid that's laying around here somewhere. So at this point, I've gotten a pretty good feel for each maker. You know, I've tried a couple knives from each and then gotten to see the collab. I have to say that the knife is definitely a Gavko design with a Ferrum Forge construction. And what I mean by that is, you know, the shape and the Mako-ness and definitely what you have going on in the blade is very Gavko in nature. But the entire construction of the knife is completely of Ferrum Forge. It's a Ferrum Forge finish on the blade. It's a Ferrum Forge kind of finish on the handle as well. It is a Ferrum Forge clip. It is a Ferrum Forge construction in terms of like the handle, like the frame shape with all the chamfering around the edge and the thick titanium slabs is all very Ferrum Forge. The standoff's very Ferrum Forge. And then, of course, the HRD is very Ferrum Forge as well. And the flipper tab is Ferrum Forge. And if you guys have seen my other videos, you know that I'm not a big fan of this flipper tab. On this particular knife, the HRD is actually doing a lot of work to help with deployment. And so not only is it extraordinarily smooth on the close, even though there isn't much distance to cover because of the curved shape of the knife, the flipper tab is pretty easy to get a hold of for deployment. It sticks out a little bit further than some of the other ones. You can see it's almost a little bit more of a flat hook, and that gives me plenty of surface area. It's not an immediate downward slope like it is on the other Ferrum Forge tabs. You can see here, there's actually a little bit of an indentation that allows you to get fairly good grip. So I actually have no complaints about the flipper tab on this particular one, which is really nice. That said, there are definitely things that I like about Gavkos a lot more than I like about Ferrum Forge knives, and that's personal opinion. You know, I'm not a big fan of spring clips on knives that are this expensive. I'm still not a huge fan of the flipper tab, even though this particular one works very well. As I mentioned before, the HRD, it works great. I've had different feelings on it with different knives, so clearly the consistency isn't quite there, at least in, again, my personal experience. It's only been 3 knives, so very, very small, you know, pool to learn from. But I still think it's somewhat gimmicky. I hate saying that because, like, it does function and it does work and it does exactly what it's supposed to do. You just don't need it. You know what I mean? So, like, it's cool, and it's a great feature, and you can feel it working. It does have an impact, but I guess really what I'm trying to say is, like, I don't care. Right? So again, that's a personal feeling. I'm sure there are people that like completely swear by the HRD, and I would not think those people are crazy. Like, I understand having the opinion that it's a good feature. I just don't really care about it. It seems unimportant to me. I again don't really like this pivot bit that they have on the Ferrum Forge knives. I'm hoping they move away from that. It just seems odd to me. What I will say on this particular one though is that I love the purple anodization on this pivot screw pivot head. I think it's a really neat touch that it's kind of more purplish indigo and not just like a direct copy of the blue that's on the knife. All right, so moving along with the features and flaws, as I mentioned before, the HRD, it's working a little bit better on this knife than it was on some of the other Ferrum Forge knives that I tried, so I find that interesting. I don't know if there's different levels of quality that they have available, or if it's just that the detent ramp on this one is better, so it doesn't catch on the HRD housing. I think that plays a big part for me. That was a problem that I had with, I believe, on the Scepter, or maybe it was, yeah, I think it was the Scepter. So that's an improvement for sure. I'm glad that they worked that out. The knife is still finger flicky. I wasn't sure with the shortened distance on the finger hole here. You can see it's even smaller than it is on the small Mako. And I wasn't quite sure if the middle finger flick would work. Usually it does on knives like this, but like I don't know, the one on the Wii knife is very small, and that doesn't work at all. So I wasn't sure when I first opened the knife, but as soon as I went for it, it was a no-brainer. It totally works. It does function as a thumb hole as well, although it's a little bit harder and does require a wrist flick, at least as far as I'm concerned. But the middle finger flick still works, so even if you're not super stoked about using the flipper tab on this one, you can flip it open with your middle finger, and it works super well. It's definitely assisted a bit by the HRD. I can definitely feel that. So yeah, that works great. As far as I'm concerned, guys, I think that if you are looking between a Ferrum Forge knife and a Gavko knife, and they're roughly the same price, I think you get more knife and higher quality from a Gavko. That's just my personal opinion. The collab aspect of it, I would like to see more features of Gavko appear as opposed to just the design, because I really like Gavko's construction and I think he does an amazing job. And I think that the Ferrum Forge construction is a little bit boring and dull and not super deserving of my money. You know, the thing is, when you're asking $500+ for a knife to just 45-degree angle, fat chamfer some edges on some tie slabs, do no internal milling. Yeah, this particular knife has this mirrored finish, the satin mirrored finish, but like that's not hard to do. You know, and then you just have a generic stonewash blade and a generic spring clip that's a super thin, tiny piece of titanium that has no distinction to it. It just blends into the knife. It's blah. It's very blah. When you have all of that going on, I don't get it. I don't get why you deserve that much money from me. When, you know, Wii Knives makes a knife for half that, that's got all kinds of CNC work and internal milling, and is really just as high quality as a knife as this, if not higher. So the Ferrum Forge knives just kind of bum me out. I really wish that they would either bring their price down or increase the amount of work that goes into the knife. You know, I understand if a knife is going to be simple in design, that's fine, but put more effort into it than just like anodizing it and like doing some light sanding around the edge, right? Like this knife didn't take that long to make. It did not take very long to make, and so that's what bums me out, is that by comparison with everything else on the market, I just don't think the Ferrum Forge knives really stand up. And even though this is the Gavko collab, you know, if you like the design and you like the way it works, it's a sick knife. Like, don't get me wrong, I am talking negatively about Ferrum Forge, which, fine, that's like my personal opinion, but I don't want to reflect poorly on this knife because, again, the ergonomics are fantastic, the action is fantastic, the usability and functionality of it is fantastic, and so this is definitely a great buy if this is the kind of thing that you're interested in and that you want. But if it were up to me, I'd be buying the Gavko. So thanks so much for watching, guys. If you want to see any videos with these other knives around, please remember to subscribe. If you like this video, please hit that like button. It definitely helps to know whether you guys appreciate a video or not. Follow me on Instagram at tovarishworks. If you would like to send me in a lovely loaner like Francisco did with this awesome knife, you can do so by emailing me at tovarishworks@gmail.com. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.